Hey guys, I'm JKFan Horiguchi from the Karate Classroom and Yukon. Today, we'll cover JKFan's October issue on 2024's strongest Kumite basics. I'll explain shrimp and crab stances. This is my first video on Yukon's YouTube, so let me introduce myself briefly. I left my longtime karate group and company due to power harassment and went independent. It's been about 11 months since I started. I plan to upload more videos here, so please subscribe and keep watching. Thanks for your support. Let's begin. Kumite's roots actually come from Kendo. In the past, there was no Kumite, so they created matches imitating Kendo. They even used Kendo armor at times. The stance was similar to Kendo, with a forward lean or upright posture. Now, quick movement is crucial, so footwork has changed significantly, influencing today's crab stance. Following the magazine, let's discuss the pros and cons of the crab stance. The magazine compares shrimp and crab stances, but I'll summarize the key points. First, the crab stance reduces your target area. Unlike the shrimp stance, the crab stance is sideways, presenting a smaller target. Simply put, I can see my hand, part of my stomach, and face here. This makes it a very easy stance to receive attacks. The second advantage is distance. In magazines, it's described as far for opponents, but close for you. I was puzzled at first, but I think I understand what it means now. In the shrimp stance, you can't lower your hips much, so your hands are closer to your opponent than your feet. Conversely, the crab stance allows you to lower your hips with wide set feet. This naturally puts your feet forward, or at least level with your hands. When teaching beginners Kumite, we often say, stand within arm's reach of your opponent. Many people measure distance by their hand's reach to their opponent. Shrimp stance, feet are far from opponent, so you must step forward more. In crab stance, hands are same, but feet are closer to opponent. You can almost step in place and get closer than in shrimp stance. This is an advantage. It gives you better distance control. Next is about quick movement. Shrimp stance is like leaning forward, so it's fast moving forward. But for back or side movement, your body faces mostly forward. So when trying to move sideways, your stomach twists awkwardly, making it harder to move. Crab stance has you facing sideways. To move, step front foot first. I use a left forward stance. Place front foot on opposite side, then bring back foot out. You've shifted a head's width, ready to dodge opponent's thrust. It's easier to move sideways. So crab stance allows equal speed in forward and backward movements, and sideways movement close to shrimp. There's a good point about moving quickly and ease of kicking. The crab stance excels at this movement, allowing quick weight shifts. You can do back rotations and roundhouse kicks easily, both forward and backward. Unlike shrimp stance, crab allows quick weight shifts in both directions. Crab stance adapts to both forward and backward kicks effectively. The crab's sideways stance makes thrusts harder to see. Shrimp stance has hands slightly to the side due to forward-facing belly. Crab movements are visible but hard to gauge in size, making them tricky. While hard to see, crab stance has few weaknesses, but is easier to kick. Crab's extended posture limits its ability to stretch for dramatic effect. Shrimp can stretch and appeal more effectively than crab stance. Magazines suggest combining shrimp and crab to overcome weaknesses. Simply put, combining strengths eliminates weaknesses of both stances. In short, from the crab stance, just turn your upper body 20 degrees to the front. This slight turn makes it harder to see your back, which was visible earlier. By using your front muscles when striking, you eliminate two weaknesses at once. That's all you need. There's one common misunderstanding about the stance, though. Some think a straight line stance is unstable. They worry about footwork. But surprisingly, that's not really an issue. It actually says a straight line is more stable. To clarify, it's not that a straight line prevents collapse. Rather, as mentioned, the crab stance allows quick center of gravity shifts. If you feel unsteady, you can shift weight back or firmly plant both feet to maintain balance. So it's not about being in a line, but how freely you can move your center of gravity. Remember, controlling your center is more crucial than maintaining a straight line. Next, there are 5 key points about the stance. First, for hands, relax shoulders and bend elbows sharply. Just bending the elbows sharply is enough, it says. Now about the feet, specifically the toes. In some styles, take a slightly wider stance, about 90 degrees. Then, as mentioned, rotate your upper body 20 degrees. If that's hard, you can point your toes slightly forward to help. It's okay to stand slightly, like a small knife's bend. Let's focus on being aware of the hip joint. Dropping on knees hurts, but hip drops are surprisingly painless. It says you won't feel much pain that way. Fourth, be conscious of moving from below the knee. Quick, small hip movements can cause head bobbing. So it's better to slide or step from below the knee. It's very good to be aware of using the area below the knee. Lastly, keep a wide stance and lower your hips firmly. As explained, having feet close to opponent is good. Standing narrow and tall loses effectiveness. So keep feet wide apart and lower your hips firmly. This stance prepares you for various situations. It also allows for quick techniques and evasions. It's important to firmly lower your hips, it says. Now let's move on to the next point. This is the pattern for an upper reverse thrust. The upper reverse thrust can be executed from the legs or from the upper body. Both ways are possible. For the upper reverse thrust, rather than the front foot, focus on your center of gravity and body axis. It's better to hit by pulling in your back foot. In the shrimp stance, weight is on the front foot, making it easy to move forward, but the feet are behind the hands. So to strike, you must first extend your feet firmly. In the crab stance, as mentioned earlier, feet are wide apart and closer to the opponent. In extreme cases, step in, shift your upper body weight forward, or pull in your back foot to shift weight forward. This thrust will naturally extend. You can do this right on the spot. The reverse thrust is similar when looking at the knee. Just leaning in like this allows you to reach far forward. With the shrimp stance, leg movement is easily noticed. So in the crab stance, instead of extending the front foot, focus on leaning your upper body or pulling in your back foot. This creates a good thrust that's hard to predict. Next is the counter to the mid-level reverse thrust. Going in with your torso makes you vulnerable, so enter from the toes, especially from the ball of your foot. This ball of the foot refers to everyone taking one step back. As one point when thrusting forward, turn your front foot's toe outward when moving forward. You can focus on the hip joint, but simply put, pointing toes out helps your body move smoothly forward without jamming. That's what it says here. For counters, don't get hit directly, enter from the toe, slightly tightening inward. You don't need to go in hard, it's a counter, so there's contact with the opponent. You can appeal well, so enter from the base. For this counterpoint, in my case, my right hand thrusts forward. It says to aim to bump with this shoulder. If you rotate around the center, you'll just take the opponent's thrust. Trying to hit here is extreme. This stays still while this moves. This moves in this direction. This aims to hit straight on. Of course, it's straight ahead. Your head naturally shifts slightly left. So against the opponent's thrust, it naturally offsets by one position. It says to hit aiming for the shoulder. Next is the kick counter. This is written as a hybrid type. What is a hybrid, you ask? It's a back rotation and a scorpion kick. A back rotation is generally a kick with bent knees. That's what is said now, but with this hybrid counter, rub the opponent upwards with your feet. The point is to knock down their upper body. At this time, be aware of your hip joint. Knock them back using your hip joint. Doing so makes their thrust unable to reach you. Then step back and do it from there. Don't advance forward to hit them. As they come to you, just as they are, rub their body and kick upwards. Finally, to increase speed, inhale rather than exhale. The body moves faster that way, so do it while inhaling. Lastly, the sixth point. The key is hip joint sensation. It said it leads to quick reactions and precise technique. I didn't get what this meant at first, but simply put, the hip and feet are naturally connected. So if the hip can react, the feet move naturally. I think that's what it means. The precise technique mentioned earlier is connected to the feet via the hips for stability. If the hips are firm, the lower body doesn't shake. And if the lower body is steady, the upper body is too. Then your line of sight is steady to see their moves. You can clearly see the hit points too. So it leads to precise technique, I believe. Lastly, there was some advice written, let's practice more deeply than usual. Anyway, the good thing about this stance is there is one place where you can drop your hips and be ready. So first, if you don't drop your hips and move quickly, this good part will not come out. So let's firmly drop our hips and get used to it in regular practice during matches without being conscious of your comfortable height. Naturally stand up and drop your hips to a certain extent so you can move quickly in either direction. Your body will become accustomed to it. With that said, this video is over. I wasn't used to it, so I ended without the last words. I'm adding it as an afterthought. In the next video, after reading this JKFan, I'm going to discuss one of the points that caught my attention. And that, I think, is pretty important. I'll pick up and talk about areas that could use supplementary explanation, so please check that out as well. Even though I learned good step work and techniques, there are times I can't pull them off in matches. So I think this will be a point that helps with that. See you again in the next video. This was Shihan Horiguchi.